Hello, this is Sam from Preform Labs, and in this video I want to show how to quickly and easily set up orthodontic or diagnostic models in the near vertical orientation. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because I see a lot of customer files, form files where they set things up and they're all over the place or inconsistent, and hopefully I hope this video will help with those situations. And good practice before starting. It's always good when the program starts up or when you start a new file to set your resin and the material height that you want to use to print these parts. So for example, I have draft version 2 set at 100 microns, which I would use this to print these models. If you don't do that and you have to change it later after doing support generation and all that, you kind of have to go back and do a bunch of extra steps again. And I think it's also worth mentioning that there's really two best ways to print orthodontic or diagnostic models. The first and most accurate is flat to the build platform, and the second is near vertical, what I'm about to show. And the nice thing is these kind of both start the same way, which I'll show now. So first I want to open up my file, and I have a couple different sets here, different lowers and uppers, even a hollow model to show what that looks like. So I'm going to load in all 5 of these STLs, and before I go any further, I'm going to turn off printability until I'm ready to review it before going to the printer. This is really nice to just be a little bit easier to see what's going on, and you just have to remember to turn it back on to review to make sure there's nothing going on before sending the job to the printer. Okay, now with that said, as I mentioned, the way to start a job with ortho models, either flat to the build platform or near vertical, is exactly the same. I get my models in, and you can do these in batches, say 2 or 5 or 10 at a time, and I get them down flat to the build platform to start. So I'm going to use my orientation button over here on the left, select base, click on the base of each model, snapping them down to the build platform. A little tricky on the hollow model here. You have to make sure you're on the bottom surface, but no problem. Once that's set, you now know that these are all snapped down, flush the build platform. And if you were printing these directly on the build platform, all you would do is move these around, play a little Tetris, and you'd hit print. Done. No supporting, nothing, just go. For vertical, a couple extra steps, but hopefully this is easier than what you've been doing before. I will put all these in position over each other. So even if these models come in at a different way, I'll just sort of rotate to show what that would look like. Put all your models in approximately the same location. And so I'll use this one as my foundation. So you see the rearmost molar in this line going through this hypothetical line. It does not have to be exact at all, but you want that line going through a similar part of the opposing side of that arch. Put the next one into place, similar. So I want the rearmost molar kind of ending on that line approximately. And if it's not the correct rotation, I'll just grab that edge sphere and put that into place like so. Again, not the end of the world if it's not exact, but you want to be pretty close and have them one over the other, like what I'm doing here. So I'll just rotate that a little bit. Once ready, drag it over. Okay, now that I have all my models over each other in a similar orientation, I'm ready to move to the next step. One thing to note is you want to select all of them, but sometimes when you have a lot of models over each other, you don't select all of them by clicking and dragging like what I'm doing. So one trick is I hold down Shift, and I'll just do another click drag from the bottom, and that usually gets all of them. Okay, with all that, we're ready to rotate these things to move it into support generation. To do that, I'm going to go over to my view tools on the right here. I'm going to click this down arrow, and that's going to snap a perfect side view of our models. Now I'm going to rotate the model to my near vertical orientation. And you want to be at around 75 degrees, give or take, maybe in between 65 and 85 degrees. The more back you put them, or the less angle you put to them, the less supports are going to get automatically generated on the anatomy of the teeth, which is very important. The more vertical, the more generated, more supports that you generate. And I will usually, and I'll show, I want to remove all supports from anatomy. I don't want them on the teeth of the models I'm printing. So pick what's best for you. If you want to cram as many as you can, and maybe the supports don't matter as much, go like pretty close to vertical, maybe 85, maybe 80 degrees. But if you don't have that many models to put on, maybe a little bit of a slight lax in angle like this. So once you're there, you're now ready to start generating supports. And before I generate supports, I think it's also worth mentioning that I like to see, if you were to, again, this line, so there's a line going through these arches from molar to molar like this, I actually like to have that parallel to the front. So I'm actually 90 degrees in rotation off on this. So with them all selected again, I will rotate them all. So from the mixer side, perpendicular straight through. And then once you get these all set up, you can imagine two sides, one side here and one side there, and you can have two rows like this. This just increases print reliability for a couple reasons. Next, we're ready to generate supports. So I'm just going to pull these out so I can see what they're doing and giving a little bit of space. And again, you can do all these steps in batches or all at once. Doesn't really matter. Just makes it a little bit trickier to sort of see what you're doing with multiple. But in reality, it's all the same. Just sort of rinse and repeat. I'm ready to generate supports. I go into my support menu here on the left. We're going to be doing full raft. Raft label is if you want the file name to be engraved on the raft itself. And then I will turn off internal supports. This will hopefully prevent it from adding supports on the interproximals if you have a space in the teeth. And otherwise, I keep it as at default. You can try going lower in the touch point size, but the more you do that, the more reliability risk you run into. So I'm going to keep it here, auto-generate. Let's see what that does. And then we're going to go and review them and edit it from here. And then we'll set it up for final print. So once this generates, let's review it. Great. And you can see this model here, if I could just isolate to that one, really great. So there's no supports on any teeth except for this rearmost molar. Even that one, I would be totally fine just going with that one. Let me show a better example that we have some more. Yeah, so this one, we got lots of, this is a very, very short trimmed model. Like it doesn't even go down to the gingiva here on this first molar here, right? So it's gonna want to support on teeth. It's really hard to escape it on this type of setup. But I'll show you what I would do if I wanted to reduce these as much as possible. So now I'm in the Edit Supports menu from Support. I like to left click and drag my mouse to select multiple points like this. You can delete it from here or hold down Support and select even more. So I'll select this one. I don't like this one. I think this one's fine. It's hard to get away from these. I just deselected what I was doing. That's cool. Just go in really quick and reselect those. Left click, drag, holding the mouse button, shift middle mouse button also pans, which is very useful. Left click, drag on these. And then, so, now that we remove these, we have quite the space between these two elements, right? There's no supports in between them now. And 3D printing, especially a model like this, is very much like building the foundation of a house. So if you're at all concerned with reliability and you want to make sure these are printing very well, it's best to actually add supports on the rear of the model like this. So maybe two here. And then the span where you really have nothing from here to there, opposed to putting it on the teeth or in the interproximals, I would just put it on the back of the model. Just a couple right there. All these things are kind of extra. I remove supports off of anatomy and just print all the time, and it's totally fine, totally reliable. So do what works best for you. Another model here. This looks actually relatively good. There's a couple. There's two on the first molars here. One on that anterior lower. I'll just delete these. And I think actually the way this model was built and all the other supports in general, I think I could delete those and just get away with it. Just apply and go. Next, and you could do multiple at a time. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll do these two models at the same time, hit edit. Interestingly here, the red indicates a support that was not generated because we turned off internal supports. It makes a lot of sense because, as I mentioned, in between this premolar and first molar here, there's a lot of space. It's trying to support these two, and it wasn't able to do it because we turned off that tool. It's probably totally fine. So I wouldn't even bother with that. Let's get rid of these on the lingual of these teeth here. Just left click dragging to select these supports. That all looks really good. And since again this is a hollow model, this looks really well supported otherwise. Even on this front model here, you can see it's pretty well supported. I'm just going to delete. I think these are pretty much good to go. But again, if you really wanted to make sure this thing was printing accurate and reliably, just click a couple more on the foundation of the model. So the rearmost part of the model like that. Done. Totally optional again. Now we're all supported and ready to go. The best way to position these parts is actually, I always recommend overlapping rafts. It's a little counterintuitive, but what it does is it makes the structure, the initial print layers all one part. And while it's a little tricky, I will go in, and you can see here, I can see in between this arch and this arch, and then here as well. I will get it as tight as I can without them touching. So make sure, these supports aren't running into your, molars or teeth there. That looks pretty good. You can even get probably a little bit more if you rotate. But the more you do this, the sort of faster and easier it becomes. I'm a little red now because we got some intersection. Maybe move this over a little bit. And that is perfect. We've got no intersection like that. And again, the time you spend in this step is going to be just more successful prints, more productivity out of that job, and less failures, right? Which then in turn equals time and energy and effort and all those things. So again, I'm just sort of rotating, and then I'll review by making sure, there's no, the model in front of this one isn't, the supports aren't intersecting that. That all looks good. And then that looks good like this. Overlap those rafts a little bit, nice and tight. And as you can see here, we could fit quite a few more models on here. Maybe 2 more arches, maybe a couple more there. That looks good. And this half of the build is now set up. And let's just say, for example, you wanted to do another set of models like this. I'm just going to hit Control or Command copy and paste. But you can see here, if you wanted to have these side by side, even if they are wider arches, you can stagger them a bit. So I'm just going to stagger these up a bit so they fit. I'm going to actually hit undo there and go back a little bit because these 2 arches are pretty wide. There we go. I just moved this one over to the right a little bit. Now that works very, very well. Probably jam in a lower up there, and just going to review it really quick. I'm going to turn on printability one more time, and it's going to calculate and check to make sure. Sorry if you hear the kid in the background screaming. He's a 3.5-year-old. That's what he does a lot of time. But that is looking really good. Printability is all checked. Again, you can put more models, jam this pack, get as many as you want. We're up to 10 right now. If you ever want to know how many parts are in there, it says here on your model list. You can also turn things on and off for visual reasons. But I could easily get 1 more lower up here, 2 more here, maybe 1 more there. So what's that? 4 more. So we're up to 14. If you really jam them in there and take your time, easily 16. Just again, depends on how much time and how much effort you want to do on these jobs for setup. One last tip here. If you are doing these in batches, or if you need to change the support location or the material type, highly, highly recommend save your form file before you do any major steps like that. If anything happens, if it crashes, it doesn't come out or whatever, you always can come back to that form file, and you don't have to do over everything I just did. Save, save, save. It saved me a lot of headache. And also, it's given me a lot of headache because I use test versions of Preform all the time, and I get myself into trouble. So saving is really helpful here. But other than that, this thing's ready to send to the printer, send it on over, get it printed, and I think you'll be really happy with the speed, accuracy, and results that you'll get. I hope this video is helpful. If there's any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below or email dental@formlabs.com. This is Sam at Formlabs. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.